Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We're just going to give it a few brief moments before we get started as we wait for everyone who's in the waiting room to join us. So just hang tight for a minute while we let everybody fill in, and we'll get started shortly. Okay. Well, hello, and thank you for joining us for AI in Apparel and Textiles, From Hype to Helpful, What Actually Works Today with KYG Trade. My name is Lisa Kaiser, Tech Guru at USFIA, and I have just a few housekeeping items to share with you before we begin. AI note-taking bots are not allowed in USFIA webinars and will be removed. We encourage you to submit questions at any time during the live program using the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom window. In order for us to have a candid conversation, all remarks are off the record and should not be quoted or shared outside of this session. And if for some reason we experience technical difficulties and lose audio, you will receive a chat message with further instructions. I will now turn things over to USFIA President Julia Hughes to introduce our speakers.
Thanks a lot, Lisa, and welcome everyone to today's webinar. I did want to just say a few words after welcoming you, and we're so pleased that we can present this webinar today. In USFIA's member survey this year, the #1 request for webinars was on AI and textiles and apparel. So we're so pleased to have with us folks who can really talk about that and how it's working today. So it's a pleasure to introduce our speakers today. First, let me introduce Todd Smith. Todd is founder and CEO at KYG Trade. And many of you know Todd already from his time at EY and KPMG, and well known in the industry. Also joining us today is Leigh Schmid. Leigh is the CEO of Pereira and Schmid Trade Services. You'll notice the nice sign behind him to remind you of the name of his company. And many of you also know Leigh from his days at L Brands when he was their SVP of Global Compliance. And what many of you may not realize is that Leigh started as a customs officer in Canada. So he brings with us that breadth of both sides on the issues. So I'm not going to talk anymore. Thanks again for joining us. And I'm turning this over to Leigh. Thanks again for joining us.
Hi, everybody. I hope you can hear me okay. And I will jump right into the first slide here. So the first question is, why is AI getting a board level attention? So, of course, the #1 thing that firms have been dealing with in the past year is the tariff volatility. And of course, there's also been, if you look at the CBP website recently, they've published enforcement statistics. And I think it's more than doubled in the past year. So pretty much across all types of enforcement. So if you take a look at that, it's kind of a scary environment. So that gets board level attention. And I'll bet some of you that are in trade compliance have never spent as much time in the C-suite as you did this year, and that's likely to continue. So the tariff is a big issue, and AI is very good at tariff classification. And it also does things like make sure that the stacking order is correct when you've got multiple items. And it's good at what-if scenarios, or some people call it tariff engineering. But that's just a few of the things that AI can help with. There's also other cost pressures across supply chains. So things like wars and pandemics and weather events can really mess up the supply chain. So I believe AI would be a good tool for doing the planning and what-if scenarios for logistics as well. There's also some worry about competitors getting ahead. So boards are worried that their competition is using AI and that they will get some kind of cost benefit or speed to market that may be pressure, and they don't want to be left behind. And then lastly, there's just executive curiosity. So a lot of the CEOs are old guys like me, and they probably didn't have time to catch up with AI other than maybe using ChatGPT. So I always want to stress to them that a business AI application is not like that. It's a lot more polished and precise on the topic at hand. So they hear in the news, for example, that AI is going to create a utopia on Earth, and then the next article will say that it's going to destroy society. So they do get very curious, and they want to know, is this thing real or is it just a fad? And they want to know if we use it, what are the risks involved? Is it safe? Next slide. So where are apparel companies using AI? So first and foremost, I think the apparel companies are leading in the trade space with using it for classification. As I mentioned, it's very good at that. But it also there's a lot of rules of origin out there. So many trade agreements, and the AI is very good at interpreting the rules of origin. If you give it the right information about the product attributes and where the raw materials came from, it will let you know whether or not you qualify. It's also good at valuation, so it knows all of the additions and deductions and how to apply them, and it can even do for sale for export appraisals. In the classification world, it's probably the most prevalent that I see out there, and it's very good. I've tried to trick the system. I've tried to give it the hardest problems I could find, and so far, I haven't been able to stump the system. In other areas, it's like social compliance. It's very good at, for example, looking at forced labor compliance. It can look at big data models that pull in data from all over the world, and it will trace back to your vendor's suppliers. So where are those raw materials coming from? What areas are they coming from? And is there any red flags? It'll identify the problem areas in your supply chain so that you can go out and do further investigation. My firm also deals with brand protection, and we developed an IP monitoring. So this AI that we have is looking for your trademarks, copyrights, and so on. It's called IP Cheetah, and it operates in multiple languages and looks across for any sites that are infringing on your intellectual property. And the evidence that it collects can be used for offline investigations. It could lead to cease and desist letters or to things like factory raids and so on. So it's a very useful tool for brand protection also. In the store operations area, I just saw a demonstration recently from an Israeli company that was operating a store management AI, and that was pretty interesting. The demo I saw was showing a district manager that had multiple stores reporting into them and how they use the AI. So it had all of the sales data as well as the dwell time of customers in the store, what's the conversion rates, and so on. And it would put that all together to make a nice dashboard for the district manager. It also had access to email, so it could actually read email that was incoming from the store managers and answer their questions and write draft emails for the district manager to review. And one example was the AI reminded the district manager that one of the store managers had a work anniversary coming up, so it drafted a nice little email. So this is store side of retail is not my specialty, but it was an interesting demo. Next slide. Okay, where the expectations are ahead of reality. So a lot of people are worried that AI is going to replace them. It really can't replace the subject matter experts. I think that Todd will be speaking about that in his presentation. Also, the large language models I think they're actually designed to look very confident in their answers, but sometimes they're incorrect. So I'd be careful about that. If you hear funny noises, my dog is having a dream here. Sorry. Um, the so the I was actually just studying for my pilot exam, and I was working through an acronym. The word is aviate, and each one of the letters stands for something in the aircraft maintenance that you have to memorize. And I forgot one of the A's, so I asked ChatGPT, what's the pilot's acronym aviate stand for? And it came back with a very confident answer, but it was completely wrong, and not one of them matched what I was looking for. So you have to be very careful about hallucinations, and good AI tools will control that. They'll put internal controls into the system to mitigate hallucinations. So that's something to think about. And not all AI tools are the same. So it's really important to look under the hood and ask a lot of questions. One of the things I like is about the KYG. I was looking at that, and when it has a confidence rating on it. So rather than sounding very confident, it actually tells you, if it says I'm only 50% confident on this, and the reason is, and it'll tell you where the unknowns are. So I like that feature. Next slide, please. Okay, what leaders should require. Just about any project that you take to management to get clearance on, the first thing they're going to ask you for is what's the return on investment? And this is no different. So it's really important that you do a deep dive, and that you have a very specific need for the AI, and that you can demonstrate that there's going to be a return on the upfront investment. So the first thing you need to do is really look at your current process and figure out what it actually costs. And that's half the battle right there, is knowing really what does my function cost right now. Then the second thing is, what will it cost after I put AI into place? If I can improve my efficiency and accuracy and take some risk out of the situation, what's that worth? And then you can demonstrate the return on investment. Also, does it integrate well into your current workflows? I've been involved with IT projects in the past where your entire procedure manual seems to get thrown out the door, and everything you have to do is a new procedure to suit the software, rather than the software being flexible enough to suit your current workflow. So I think that AI is much better and much more agile and adaptive to current situations. So if you're already doing classification, what are your source documents? What do you use to get the product attributes, for example? What documents do you have already on file to prove the origin and the value? And what's your system of record? Where do you store all that information? So those are important considerations. And then if you plug the AI into that, it shouldn't really affect or impact your current flow that much, other than making it much quicker and flow seamlessly. Next, you got to have training, so the users have to understand how to use the AI, and change management is an important consideration. If your users are absolutely terrified that AI is going to replace them, I've heard of situations where they actually sabotage the project in order to make the AI look bad. So it's important when you're presenting it that you get the buy-in, that the users are actually enthusiastic about accepting it and using it, and they want to learn it. Also with IT, you have to meet the IT standards. So it's important to have IT in on right up front as the discussion unfolds, because they're going to have their own concerns about a new software being presented. And then finally, data security is really important. So CEOs are asking, this is very confidential information that the AI agent is getting access to. So what's it doing with it? Where is it being stored? Are you using it for training purposes, training the agent, that is? And can it get out to my competitors? So all of those questions are something that leaders are very interested in and need to be answered. Next slide. So why is trade planning finally getting some attention? I've never seen anything like it, and I've been in the business over 40 years. So just this morning, the local Orlando CBS station was talking about tariffs on TV. I couldn't believe it. It's like it's all over everywhere. So historically, the resources for planning purposes all went into income tax, and the reason was pretty simple. The rates were a lot higher for tax than they were for customs. Other than textile and apparel and maybe footwear, maybe automotive a little bit, but mostly um, duty rates for most industries were in the single digits. So a lot of people weren't investing a lot of money in tariff planning, but suddenly the impact is much higher. The margins are really getting eaten into. So it's shifting from tax planning to trade planning very quickly. Um, and all of the changes that keep occurring. So, you got IEPA duties, and then all of a sudden the court overrules it, and then you have new duties coming on in place of that. So it's all very complex and confusing and really difficult to plan. So if you get called into the C-suite and asked a lot of questions about the latest change, you really want to be able to do some rapid scenario modeling, give them options, and make a recommendation based on the modeling that you've done to show them what the best solution might be. Next slide. Okay, some final thoughts. So remember, AI is a tool for use. It's not a replacement. So stop worrying about AI replacing you and start worrying about the guy that uses AI and already knows how to use it, replacing you. And so I would recommend highly that you take a look and you start to learn what it can do for you and how it can make your job easier and take some of the risk out of the business. It can be a very good competitive advantage when it comes to speed to market, cost savings, and so on. I think that AI can really create a competitive advantage. And then finally, I think that any expert that's using AI will outperform others because they can do things faster. And that doesn't mean that you don't have to do the research. You have to check and you have to be, but an expert will recognize when things are correct and when something doesn't smell right, and then do a little more digging. So I think that it really will. It'll remember things that you forgot. Like I'll give you a quick example. The proper way to classify a product is to start with the general rules of interpretation. Then you figure out, oh, what chapter is this going to be in? And then you read all the chapter notes. And then finally, you start looking at the schedule. Now, most people that I know that classify often just skip right into the schedule. And most of the time, they probably get it right. But once in a while, they say, oops, that chapter note I forgot to read actually puts me in a different place. So the AI doesn't forget any of that. It does every time it goes through all of the material that it's supposed to review before it makes that final decision. So I think it's a great tool, and now I will turn it over to my friend Todd, who gets to show you all the fun stuff.
Thank you, Leigh. Can everybody hear me okay? Awesome. And I enjoy interactivity and dialogue. And so if any of you have questions, feel free to, raise your hand or, put it in the Q&A or the chat. we'll be watching that. And Leigh, what a great presentation! Thank you very much for that intro. I think you really covered a lot of ground with the presentation. And for the viewers out there, I think there's some really good points to be taken there. Um, we can go into the next slide, and what I'm going to be covering today are strengths, AI strengths. The as Leigh kind of mentioned and in the setup, if you will, the importance of having a human in the loop, and in particular, for textiles, but it really applies to all industries. We're going to talk a little bit about what I refer to as the fully automated myth, and then talk a little bit about the internal controls that Leigh was also mentioning in the form of guardrails. So those are like broadly some of the categories we're going to talk about. And I don't want to sound like a commercial or a sales pitch, but in order for me to kind of show you practically how AI is working in your space of trade compliance, I can only do that by giving you examples, and those examples will be coming from our platform. So I apologize in advance if it sounds too promotional. That's not the intent. We're trying to give you real practical examples. And so if you go to the next slide, what is working today are the things that you see on the board. And uh, AI, as Leigh said, it does work, and it will help you get through your day job faster. It will help teams scale without necessarily having to add headcount. And it's doing that because it is what we're seeing from our customers and conversations we're having. It's 4 times faster. And I can also say this because I was a delivery partner at the Big Four, and I knew and know how long it takes to do some of this stuff the old-fashioned way. And what we're seeing today, what I'm seeing today, puts a big smile on my face. Like I wish I had this tool when I was delivering at the Big Four. And then in terms of like confidence and reliability, Leigh also mentioned that the general purpose LLMs will give responses that read very confidently. But if and thank God Leigh as a pilot, really looked at the output. Good to know, right? As you read this very confident output that the model's given you, you as a subject matter expert will start to like, no, that's not quite right, and so really the importance of using AI and still having a career, is to, use an AI system that I would advocate is not a general purpose LLM because of we're dealing with a very highly complex regulated area, and really the purpose-built AI native platforms that are designed to really focus in a deep vertical are the ones that are getting the good results that I would call job security safe, right? Um, so and the other thing just to point out is like, you see here a 93% score on this was the October exam last year. It took our AI 5 minutes to answer all of the questions and score 93%. I have to say, no, we did not feed it any of the answers ahead of time. It got the HTS section 100% correct. And so there's a lot of positivity, around the ability to do this stuff. And, we're going to give you examples of these different areas as we go further into the presentation. But having, said that, if we go to the next slide, why, if it's 93% accurate, let's say, and it's faster, why not just hit the button, let K, our AI assistant, or, whatever system you're using, do all the work. And it's because it's still not all the way there. And will it ever be? I think in some areas, yes, in some areas, no. All right. You can't just, generally make a statement, that it's going to be 100% for everything because it's not. But there are things, that we are seeing that are happening in a repetitive way, where you can get comfortable over time with the confidence in the output on certain things. So, but even with that, like even if you're going to let things auto-complete without a human in the loop, which we don't advocate, you still have to be able to demonstrate reasonable care and responsible supervision, depending on, what side of the fence you're on. And, in that regard, because of the complexity of our field, with regulations, procedures, tweets that are changing the regulations, so often, even if you think about it, like even the tariff schedule itself, I don't know, changed some ungodly number of times. There were more revisions last year than we've ever seen. I think it was like in the teens, the number of revisions that we saw. You know, any system, it's hard for any system when, especially AI, a semantic-based system, when it's generating output, to know that it has picked, the right version of the tariff schedule based on the entry date. There's a lot of complexity there, guys. And now with all the Chapter 99 codes, again, our AI is trained with guardrails and internal controls. It knows look for entry date, pull right, revision. The general purpose models just aren't going to, they may seem like they're doing that, and maybe they'll get it right some of the time, but not consistently. And by the way, the same exam I did drag and drop it into one of the other general purpose LLMs, and it took about the same amount of time, if you're curious, but it only scored like 63%. So nuance, complexity, change means we need subject matter experts, right, that are reviewing the output of these systems, even our system. A human should review it. And this also gets back, to my days and Leigh's days, probably, with the big four. It's almost like partner review, senior manager review before you deliver it to a client, right? So you could think about AI, as a manager, senior associate level resource at a law firm, big four, even customs, doing a lot of the work, handing it to the senior manager, partner, supervisor for that final review before concluding and, attesting, as we like to say, that the answer is right. So human in the loop is critical on just about everything. As a CEO founder, I'm a licensed customs broker of an AI trade AI platform. I'm not going to preach that, you guys buy the software and go to the beach. No, human in the loop, important. But there are areas where we're seeing that you could fully automate. I would say like post-entry reviews, a little lower risk. It's post-entry and you're looking for discrepancies. Let it run. Let it come up with the discrepancies. And then of course you're going to do your review. And then even like tariff classification, you'll get comfortable that the AI is reliably coming up with the right answers for a particular, class and kind of goods. And then you can let it autocomplete. But have those internal audits, those, quarterly reviews where humans are reviewing on a sample basis the output, making sure the model's not drifting, and ensuring that it remains up to speed. So human in the loop, critically important. If you could advance the slide, as we're all dealing with areas of complexity, as I just said, especially in apparel. the nuance of apparel with all the different new fabrics and synthetics that are coming on the market, the increase in work that we have to do because of the rapidly changing regulations and tariff schedules. Of course, AI as Leigh said earlier, the timing was great, because it's helping us get our work done faster without just adding more and more headcount. But there's this friction. There's this elephant in the room. And that is on the next slide, which I know, we're all been hearing a lot about. If you can advance the slide on this ruling in the US 350-722, which dealt with AI and classification. And whether or not an AI system that brokers or really importers are using is basically is conducting customs business without a license. So we have this friction where we have all these changes. The board's looking for help. We need something to help us get our work done faster. And an issue drops on the world of compliance that says, "Whoa, I know we know you need tools, but you have to selectively make sure that you're using the right tools, or there could be, legal penalty consequences." And that's what this ruling has highlighted. And we've had a couple of webinars with our friend Richard Wortman at Grunfeld to talk about what the ruling says it means, and the guardrails around using AI platforms. And these are the findings and recommendations that you see here on the screen. We're a U.S. company, if anybody's curious. I mentioned a little bit earlier, I'm a licensed customs broker. The co-founders are brokers. We have a trade attorney on the team. So our AI, our AI assistant, I like to say, was born in the U.S., resides in the U.S. Everything is in the U.S. And so we feel like we're in really, solid footing. Our platform also is not connected. We're not filing entries, and that was part of the fact pattern of the entity that was conducting customs business without a license. So there's a little further separation there. Again, if there are any questions that come up during the presentation, feel free to ask, and we'll try to get them addressed. So moving on, if we go to the next slide, we talk a lot about human in the loop, and here's sort of the way we frame, what you could fully automate versus what absolutely goes to a human for review. And another example that I use, just to put it in really simplistic terms, is getting AI and implementing AI, a system. It's kind of like bringing a puppy home. You don't let the puppy run around the house on day one. You kind of contain and keep tabs on the puppy until you're comfortable the puppy knows where to go and do its business. And then you kind of back off and let the puppy do its thing. It's somewhat similar to that. Very sophisticated puppy. But once you get comfortable with and N is that confidence score, then yeah, let some of these processes fully complete. Just know though, even though it's fully completing, it's not our software or whatever software you're using's attestation certification that it's accurate. It's still yours. You still have to exercise reasonable care. You're the one that is finalizing the results and the determination. So even if it's fully automating, like our platform will fully automate, but it'll be the company or a user at the company in the background that's automatically getting their signature, if you will, on these determinations. So it obviously behooves you to do your own internal audits. But the end score is something that we've come up with that is highly configurable. Some companies have a higher tolerance for risk than others. There'll be areas, within the products or families of products that you're working in that will have different confidence levels that you can configure in the system, so that some things will auto-complete with a higher confidence than others. It's not like system wide. You can configure this based on the fact pattern. So that's the construct that we work within. And now, if you go to the next slide, we're going to get into just some examples of how our clients are using this. And so this is like, I know this is a PowerPoint, but what we're showing you here works. All right, like this is in production. We have large Fortune 50 higher enterprise customers that are, paying to use this daily in their operations in the US and in other parts of the world. We have all the ISO certifications. We're on Azure. We have all of the data security that your internal security teams are going to want to review before they approve it. The companies are coming up with AI review boards that are concerned about their model or someone else's model getting trained with your data. We don't do any of that, and so we like to say that we're enterprise grade, and it works. So usually I would start off and lead off with HS classification. But as Leigh said earlier, there are lots of, platforms and startups that are doing AI classification. We do it too. I mentioned Kay got 100% on the broker's exam. I decided to start off with FTA qualification, given, that this is apparel. And I'm sure there's a lot of apparel importers that are applying for FTA benefits. This is a great use case, for using AI. The system can ingest and or create cost worksheets and bills of materials from unstructured data. Doesn't have to have like a expensive API integration into a Bamboo Rose or some other PLM. Of course, we have that, but if you don't and want to operate it on a standalone basis, drag and drop PDFs of bills of materials, tech packs, pictures, invoices, POs, and the AI makes sense of it and constructs, the bill of materials, it looks up, where it's made, where it's going to, it classifies the product and all the components in the tech pack or the BOM if they're not already classified, and then determines the right based on the HS code, the right rule of origin, and then does the calculation, whether it's a tariff shift or an RVC. And if the information is there, if it's there, like if there's POs, not POs, but bills of lading that show transportation. So like if it's post factum before the shipment or after the shipment, I should say, it'll even look at transshipment, issues. And Leigh also mentioned earlier about how the AI is actually instructive, and so no, we're not losing our jobs, and it's not going to do your job for you. It's going to help you do your job faster. It's also going to help train you and train your people because the way we've worked our system, and maybe you've seen other systems that will do this, if it doesn't have all the information, it'll stop and ask for information. So in that way, it's training. And as you can see here, it highlighted things on transshipment that, maybe the person who was reviewing maybe not even wouldn't even think of, but as you read this, it's like, huh, it helps train users and people in our field. So this is an FTA example. The next slide shows an entry packet audit. So we're using our tooling to literally do audits. We can take an entry packet with the same information that I just explained on an FTA, but this could be for any reason. It's just a plain 101 audit, internal audit, what have you. And it will look at the entry documentation, the invoices, the POs, the payment records, again, transportation, proof of payment. And I know everybody here who's done an audit loves doing this. And I know you're going to get really upset that all you have to do now is drag and drop all that information wait about 5 minutes, depending on, how many lines or, what you're testing, and you're going to get an audit report. All right. So this is really going to help everyone out, everyone listening, get through their job faster. Again, you'll want to have a human audit the audit, but this is really going to help people deal with the environment that we're living in now, which I'm going to say something. I don't know if anybody out there remembers the movie Cape Fear with De Niro. I have to use that because Cape is a thing. And now we got this Cape Fear, right? Because everyone's concerned that if you apply for a IEPA refund, there's a risk that you're going to get audited, and for good reason. You have to actually attest that when you file the entry or the refund, that it was correct and your entries were correct. And of course, that could open you up to exposure if they're not correct. So a lot of people are wondering, we really should get ahead of this and sort of audit, our entries before we hit the button and attest that everything was right. And or if there's going to be an audit because you did ask for a refund, AI is going to help you prepare for that much, much faster than if you don't have it. So audits are good and working. And the next slide is post-entry reviews, which it's a little bit, it's obviously, you guys know, post-entry review versus full-on audit. But yeah, you can do the same thing and make sure your broker filed correctly, based on information that you fed to the broker. We're getting these done within the 10-day window, so corrections can be made before the 7501, certainly, for within the PSC window. So that's another area. If you go to the next slide, AI and first sale. Okay. So look, if we could do a free trade agreement qualification, why couldn't we do a first sale qualification? We can. All right. So in the same way, you could take the bill of materials or create a bill of materials, the AI can create a cost worksheet. The AI can evaluate the profit and loss of a parent versus a factory and do the circumstances of sales test analysis. It can look at risk of loss. It can look at diversion risks and whether or not there's a complete document package to support and substantiate a first sale transaction, whether you're qualifying a new factory or auditing an existing onboarded factory. And so, and here again, it's very instructive because when you're onboarding first sale, there's so many checklists: invoice one, invoice two, PO one, PO two, payment record one and two. And from a training, again, from a training process for the people, the humans, that are doing this, it's instructive. It'll help them identify quickly what's missing in the document package. So it's easier to, again, as Leigh said, generate that email that goes back out to the supplier requesting more information. The AI can actually write the email and this is what's missing. And it's a rinse and repeat process as the suppliers are providing information back. You ingest. Is it complete? Yes or no? Rinse and repeat until it's complete. And now you have your first sale qualification. So this is another area of where AI is working today. Go to the next slide. Now I'm getting into what most companies lead with, which is classification. And this is an example where we can ingest an unstructured tech pack, maybe that just has images, and the AI can take that information and do a darn good job of figuring out what it is, what it's made of. It can go out to the internet if there's nothing more than a picture and see if that product exists. If it's a new product that's never been produced, obviously it's not going to find anything on the internet, but it can go into your own PLM and your own material master and pull information out that it needs in order to classify the product. But it does a really good job of determining the fabric. It's not as good as getting down to the stitch count yet, but it's really good at looking at, pockets, hoods. It's pretty good at determining the type of material. The next slide is a shoe, and it was able to not only look at the picture, but it found the brand name of the manufacturer imprinted, in the sole, and kind of put together that, well, this is high grain leather, all right, and it's going to be in a price range of X, men's versus women, from pictures. So this stuff is very helpful and it works. And then if you go to the next slide, we another area where AI is really helping us get our job done faster is by this notion of introducing a semantic-based search of the cross rulings. Instead of having to think, well, what's that one word I need to do a search in cross or another system to get the ruling to find the needle in the haystack. You don't necessarily need to do that. You could generally describe, the product and the facts, and it'll come back with relevant rulings, which you cannot do anywhere else. And so this is somewhat of a game changer. I mean, you could say, I only want to do string search with a word, or I want to go full semantic and find rulings that deal with feline chow, cat food. You could say feline chow. It'll know you're talking cat food and come up with relevant rulings. Another on the next slide, tariff analytics. I mean, this is not so much AI, tariff analytics, but the AI has proven helpful with the tariff stacking rules and all the different machinations of if-thens, based on the different Chapter 99s and exclusions. It's actually been helpful in staying on top and being able to quickly iterate and get these decision tree if-then statements working right, so that our users can do their tariff calculations and stacking and sequencing correctly. And then one more slide, I think maybe two more on examples involving forced labor. Everybody's talking about forced labor, supplier third-party risk management. We have integrations into the companies that you see here, and since we already have that rich BOM tech pack supplier information, what we can do is feed that into these other content providers, and then not ask them to come up with everybody and their brother and sister, father, hierarchy, progeny, whichever direction you're going, whoever they did business with. What we do is we simply say, look, this is who we've identified in our transaction, in our shipment information, and we just want to know what you know about these guys and if there's any risk. And we can rationalize inputs from multiple providers to come up with a really rich data set and output for forced labor or any kind of third-party risk management, supply chain visibility, in just about any industry. And then what we can do is, if you go to the next slide, is we can take that information and produce a response. Maybe it's to a customer. Customers are asking for their suppliers to prove that they are doing due diligence on the supply chain. So we can produce that kind of output, and we could also produce a response to a detention request. Again, it's very similar, drag, drop, tons of bills of lading, POs, invoices, purchase orders, payment records, time cards, WIP data, and just the AI can take literally gigabytes of that information and make sense of it, and then be able to present it in a very succinct detention response. So these are areas that AI is working today in production, enterprise security, no hallucinations because we're not letting our AI agent K go out to the internet to just find information on regulations. It's really lots of guardrails and it's really contained with lots of controls. Um, and so on the next slide, I'm just going to end with this, and I'm getting kind of back to where we started, which is, the whole guardrails are really important in this business. All right. Again, the general purpose LLMs, maybe they're going to get there. They're certainly not there today. And as a trade compliance specialist, I wouldn't want to bank my career on output from from a general purpose LLM, um, because you really have no way to contain and constrain where and what regulations it's relying on, whether or not they're the current or the right regulations for the fact pattern, and having access to discrete information about your transaction or products. So it's because of the type of internal controls that are built into AI native trade compliance platforms that are purpose built to address, our work, that are really making this realistic, for us as subject matter professionals. So that's my presentation. I'm not Lisa or Julie seeing many questions. Maybe they were answered uh, behind the scenes, but maybe you guys have some questions.
We do. Thank you so much for that presentation. And I just want to add that Leigh lost internet and
Oh
got
no,
booted from. So you're going to have to answer
it's
all the
all on me,
questions
huh?
now that come in. So
That
just
wasn't
a
planned, was it?
no, no, it's not. Well, you'll have to ask him about that later. But thank you so much for that. And just a reminder to our attendees, you can continue to submit your questions via that Q&A panel. We'll dive right in. So our first question is, are there AI tools out there available to help proactively notify organizations of trade or customs regulatory announcements that are relevant to apparel and textiles and changes globally beyond just tariffs?
I'm not aware of an AI-based platform that will automatically send out like notices and alerts on a very specific, area of trade. I don't know if one that does it generally. Maybe they're out there, but I'm just not familiar.
So we need someone to build one then, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
All
Note,
right.
note to file.
Note to file. That's
Yeah.
right. Okay. Leslie, did you want to add anything
Yeah,
to that?
just
Go ahead.
Todd, I
Oh, hi,
took a
Leslie.
stab. Hi there. I took a stab at that behind the scenes, but I did mention, and you might want to mention this, build on this as well, that the products and classifications that are on our platform are monitored, so they will get notified if there is a change
Correct.
in regulation.
That's yeah, yeah. If correct. If you have as a customer products that have been classified, free trade agreement, export controls, we will monitor changes to regulations for your products on our platform and get alerted. But just general what's going on in the world, yeah, that's something different.
Okay, so for our next question, you mentioned that fully automated AI trade compliance is a myth, but you also mentioned that a lot of tasks like post-entry audits can be automated with AI. So how can companies draw the line between what should be automated with AI and what requires human expertise?
Yeah, actually, the slide had in parentheses, that it may or may not be a myth. So, yeah, look, we've designed our platform with that confidence score that I discussed during the presentation. It's really up to you as the user to get comfortable with the confidence scores that Kay is coming up with. So if Kay says, if she says she's 90% confident, then you have to decide if she's right or wrong. All right. And then over time, like the puppy analogy, if you're comfortable that when Kay says 90%, You agree? Well, I think there's an argument there where you could let something autocomplete. And I think that's the construct we've come up with how we would advise you to draw the line. You still need to audit, and make sure that that's not drifting. Drifting means it's the model's getting lazy. The model maybe had changed. So the human still needs to do those audits and then tweak and tune, and course correct if they identify any of that drift.
Right. Well, that's helpful. So you talked a little bit about the fact that these are enterprise level tools. Is AI a practical solution for small to medium sized businesses that may not have the budget that larger ones do?
Yeah, I think so. The the way we've addressed the product is in the form of it's a software as a service. And so just like any software as a service, you have like, low, medium, high enterprise lanes with different pricing, and it's really just based on volume. And so even, small volume users can get in and start using it at a very affordable price. And you don't have to be an enterprise to have access to our platform. We have small importers, we have solo practitioners, brokers, consultants, all the way up to the largest of large enterprises.
Okay, thank you. Well, hopefully, if there's any
Yeah,
small businesses that have joined us, they feel a little more confident about that.
yeah.
So one of your slides, you shared the CBP ruling that had several findings, recommendations for AI providers. You said KYG meets those, but are they generally realistic requests for the industry? And how would a company go about evaluating an AI vendor to make sure they meet these criteria?
Yeah, no, that's a sticky question. The ruling I thought, answered some questions, but also, raised a lot of questions. Um, I think, sort of the arc, if you will, of that ruling is that the AI models, algorithms, how it's sort of wired, to come up with responses. Um, is to have been designed by a licensed customs broker. I mean, that's what the ruling said. I don't think that means that the engineer needed to be, but whoever gave that engineer, the direction needed to have been a licensed customs broker. So, I mean, that would be one gating question. And then, if the platform is also wired up to transmit declarations, entries to customs, it does kind of, create just another level of scrutiny. And in those cases, the provider, the software provider, um, needs to be a licensed customs broker based in the US. If it's an AI provider that's not connected to a system that is transmitting data, then it sounds like if all it's doing is AI classification, then it does not need to be in, a company that's based in the US. Um, so that's just, I think those are some things that it did answer, but there's still a lot of unanswered questions. And it's a pretty simple question. If you're talking to a software vendor, do you have a C-level, a senior officer that is a licensed customs broker, and do you have a permit to conduct business?
Yep, pretty important
Yep.
questions, right? So one of the things you talked about was guardrails without friction. But in practice, how can apparel and textile importers build AI guardrails into their compliance programs without slowing down the speed advantages that they're supposed to get from the AI?
Yeah. Again, that's the tension because we all want to go fast. We have, and it's really interesting. Like we have some clients, and I know we're right at the hour, so I'm going to try to quickly wrap it up. But we have some clients that say, look, we don't want the AI to make any assumptions. If the AI is making an assumption, stop and ask questions. And then we have other clients that just say, we just want an HS code, right? Just get us an HS code. So it runs the gamut. It's really up to each company's level of risk tolerance, but if you have a lower risk tolerance, then you're going to want to do internal audits. You're going to want to check and review. I would say autocomplete what you're confident about, where there's a high confidence score, but continuously audit.
I think that's good advice. I have one final question. So, what do you think is the number one reason that business leaders are reluctant to adopt an AI tool?
I don't, I think when we say business leaders, if we're talking about the compliance directors, I do think that there is a camp of early adopters that just are confident, they understand where there needs to be guardrails, and they want to move. All right. And then we have, the other that are sort of late adopters that are more skeptical and are going to be just taking their time and not wanting to change unless it's sort of forced on them. So it's like any normal distribution. I think that's what we're seeing today. But the number of people in the camp of we've seen enough, we know this stuff works, so we want it is definitely growing.
Yep, I think so too. All
Yeah.
right. Well, that is all the questions that we have. Thank you so much for all of your insights. And I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up here. So before we send everybody off, just please mark your calendars for USFIA's Washington Trade Symposium coming back to Washington, D.C. on July 15th. Registration is now open and stay tuned for your emails for additional details. We hope to see you all in D.C. this summer. And as always, you can find out information about this and all of our upcoming events on our website at usfashionindustry.com. This concludes today's webinar. Please don't hesitate to reach out with any additional questions. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you all at our next event. Have a
Thank
great
you,
evening.
Lisa. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, guys.
All right, bye-bye.